Blade Runner faces murder charge in South Africa. His girlfriend is shot and killed at his home in Pretoria. You're watching the Arise News Hour, and that is our top story. Paralympic gold medal winner Oscar Pistorius was refused bail. He'll appear in court tomorrow, and we have the latest pictures.
Also tonight, South African President Jacob Zuma will deliver his State of the Nation address in the next hour. We'll have an update. He'll focus on the economy and the future. How Valentine's Day is a kiss of life for the Kenyan economy. And Nigerian star Asha talks exclusively to Arise about fame, love, and what really matters.
Now, he is the South African track star whose speed, strength, and bravery brought Olympic crowds to their feet this summer in London. And she was the beautiful model, law graduate, and entrepreneur on the brink of a career in television.
Early this morning, neighbors heard shouting and then gunshots at the Pretoria home of Oscar Pistorius. Tonight, he is in custody, and police say he is the only suspect in the murder of his girlfriend. Arise News' Heather Scott has the story.
Oscar Pistorius in happier times. The South African Paralympic track star is a hero celebrated all over the world, the first athlete to compete in both Olympic and Paralympic Games. Oscar Pistorius this morning in police custody after the shooting death of his girlfriend at his home in Pretoria. The track champion and the glamorous model turned TV star Reeva Steenkamp were well known on South Africa's party circuit. And Steenkamp's publicist told Britain's Sky News it was a happy relationship.
They've been together for a couple of months, and it's been a fabulous relationship, a healthy, fabulous relationship. So at the moment, it's shocking. No one knows what happened. We're waiting for information, and there's people that we still need to talk to validate some of the stories.
Steenkamp had posted on social media that she was planning a Valentine's Day surprise for her boyfriend. Instead, she died at his Silver Lakes home early this morning of multiple gunshots to the arm and head. Police outside the gated community say they have no evidence that Steenkamp was mistakenly thought to be an intruder.
The South African Police Service were just as surprised this morning to hear over the radio that allegations had been made that the deceased had been perceived to be a burglar. We were very surprised, and those allegations did not come from us.
The police spokeswoman also told reporters that there had been issues of a domestic nature at the house before. Pistorius, known as the Blade Runner for the racing prosthetics that replaced the lower legs he was born without, has been charged with murder. Heather Scott, Arise News.
Now, for the very latest, we go live to our Johannesburg bureau and join our correspondent Gary Alfonso, who's been following the story. Gary, I guess the one word that can be used to describe this story, not just in South Africa, but globally, is shocker.
Well, I think if you put it into perspective, Valentine's Day morning, and one of the most celebrated people on the planet, Time magazine referred to Oscar Pistorius as one of the 100 most influential people in the world, shoots his girlfriend to death in his apartment at 4 a.m. in the morning. So I don't think Hollywood blockbusters get better stories than that, but in a very real sense, South Africa woke up to a shocked morning when it emerged that there are different views about exactly how his model Reeva Steenkamp came to her death, and also the different versions and where the stories came from. What we do know officially is that that Oscar Pistorius spent most of the day in police custody, and he was taken to a medical facility where medical tests were done on him, and also for further forensic investigations. He's spending tonight in a small prison cell or in a holding cell at a small police station just east of Pretoria. And he'll be going to court in the morning, and that's where his first official bail application will take place. And that's where obviously it will emerge whether or not police put forward a charge of first-degree murder, and or whether he still claims that, or as reportedly in the media, claims that he said he mistook her for a burglar or an intruder at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Gary, we have to be careful at this point to insist that these are just allegations right now, right? He hasn't been charged, although police are insisting that he's the only suspect right now.
Well, the National Prosecuting Authority has confirmed that he will be charged with murder. There's no doubt about that. So whether it happens tomorrow morning or later in the day or perhaps even Monday, doesn't make a difference to the fact that they have put together an investigation so far, and nothing so far points to any other charge or any other suspect. But what one can also perhaps infer from the fact that his lawyers, that's Pistorius' lawyers, are not pushing for an urgent bail application is obviously the fact that they also feel there are some facts that need to be considered, and they will take their cue obviously from the legal precedent.
What's the response like back home there, Gary, across, let's say, social media and across the platform? Is there a lot of sympathy? Is there back and forth? Is there condemnation? Is it mixed?
Well, I think obviously earlier in the morning today there was widespread sympathy for what happened, and everybody was asking about the state of mind of Oscar Pistorius. Later in the day, as it became apparent that the police were possibly going to push murder charges against Pistorius, what started coming out was very real action on the part of some of the business links that Pistorius is linked to. For instance, Mnet, the big broadcaster in Africa, has started taking off billboards promoting Oscar's role or his support of the annual Oscar, the Academy Awards process in Hollywood. He was going to be an ambassador for the Oscars, and they started taking down billboards across South Africa next to highways, because of the inference with the Oscar name. And then secondly, Nike has also started removing their logos from his website, and although they officially said they were still taking a wait-and-see view on this, they have definitely removed its seemingly support of Oscar Pistorius on his website. But I think you correctly state and intimate that it would be incorrect to try and get ahead of this. One never knows where it goes once it gets into the courts, and the rule of innocent before proven guilty still applies. But it seems the evidence is quite overwhelming, and the tide seems to be moving more towards questions around how Ms. Steenkamp was killed at 4 a.m. in the morning in Mr. Pistorius' home.
Gary, we're going to have to leave it at that. Thanks so much. Gary Alfonso joining us there from our Johannesburg bureau. Debbie?
All right, thank you, Jeff. Also, right now in South Africa, President Jacob Zuma is delivering his State of the Nation address. He's focusing on the troubled economy and the future of the country. South Africa faces elections next year. As you can see, it's going on right now. Let's listen in.
Contains proposals for tackling the problems of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It is a roadmap to a South Africa where all will have water, electricity, sanitation, jobs, housing, public transport, adequate nutrition, education, social protection, quality healthcare, recreation, and a clean environment. The achievement of these goals has proven to be difficult in the recent past due to the global economic recession. The crisis in the Eurozone affects economy as the Eurozone is our major trading partner, accounting for about 21% of our exports. Our GDP growth is expected to average at 2.5%, down from 3.1% in the previous year. We need growth rates in excess of 5% to create more jobs. The National Development Plan outlines interventions that can put the economy on a better footing. The target for job creation is set at 11 million by 2030, and the economy needs to grow threefold to create the desired jobs. In my last meeting with the business community, the sector indicated that for the economy to grow threefold, we must remove certain obstacles. We'll engage business, labor, and other social partners in pursuit of the necessary solutions. No single force acting individually can achieve the objectives we have set for ourselves. Honorable members, I would now like to report on progress made since the last State of the Nation address, and also to discuss our program of action for 2013. I'll look at the 5 priorities: education, health, the fight against crime, creating decent work, as well as rural development and land reform. Last year, I addressed the nation on government's infrastructure plan. By the end of March this year, starting from 2009, government would have spent about 860 billion rand on infrastructure. Various projects are being implemented around the country. I will discuss just a few. The construction of the first phase of the Mokolo and Crocodile River water augmentation has commenced, and it will provide part of the water required for the Matimba and the Medupi power stations. The construction of the bulk water distribution system for the De Hoop Dam began in October.
You are listening live to the State of the Nation address given by the President of South Africa, President Jacob Zuma. Joining us here in the studio, Desni Mazi is the former senior editor for the Financial Mail in South Africa, and she's currently with the Royal Africa Society in London. We want to thank you, Desni, so much for joining us. We've heard a little bit of President Zuma's address, and perhaps we'll hear a little bit more. He started off talking about the economy, which I imagine is not a surprise, some of the obstacles that need to be overcome, and then he was going on to talk about the progress that has been made since last year's address. I know we've just heard a few minutes, but what were your impressions of what you've heard so far?
Well, South Africa is under lots of pressure to do something, take action, especially on its macroeconomic policy framework. The thing is, it's the biggest economy in Africa, is the one issue. Therefore, it's also the most sophisticated economy in Africa, so it's integrated quite a lot into the global economy, which is why it's been affected quite a lot by the financial crisis, as Zuma's pointed out. However, the growth that is required is not only to keep international investors happy, it's also to bring people out of poverty, which are the other objectives, you know, that he's also highlighted. So it's a big task for the government. The odds are completely stacked against them, and as you can hear, progress has been really hard.
And when you hear him talking, Desni, one would think that the economy would be growing, and it may be growing internally, but he has just said it's going to go down from 3 point something to 2 point something. Already he's announced that.
Yeah, well, this is the surprising thing. I mean, you know, in the last State of the Nation address, he announced that there would be massive infrastructural spend. So one would think that the result of that would be jobs growth, for example, you know, so those kinds of things to me are quite surprising. There are many reasons for South Africa's, other reasons for the decrease in GDP, aside from the global recession, has been volatility in the agricultural sector, especially with farming. Mining as well has seen massive disinvestment. There were problems at the Marikana mine last year and Lommen as well, which scared off investors. And the main issue really is that socioeconomic equality. So South Africa's got, it's an upper middle income country in terms of the IMF rankings, but the income disparities are so high that it's sitting at 0. The Gini coefficient was a measure of income inequality, is sitting at 0.7%, and this is an insanely high number. It's one of the highest in the world. And all the ratings agencies that downgraded the sovereign debt last year has said that the ruling party's inability to galvanize around a coherent macroeconomic policy framework is making investors really worried, because all the things that we see, the farming violence, the violence at Marikana, are all results of the government's failure to take action and bringing people out of poverty.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Desney, I'm going to ask you just to sit tight. We're going to listen just a little bit more to what President Zuma is presenting to South Africa.
We have expanded the rail capacity through the delivery of 11 locomotives. The first phase of the expansion to increase iron ore port capacity at Saldanha to 60 million tons per annum was officially completed in September last year. Construction work is taking place in 5 cities: Cape Town, Nelson Mandela Bay, Rustenburg, eThekwini, Tshwane, to integrate the different modes of transport: bus, taxi, and train. In the energy sector, we have now laid 675 kilometers.
And we are again listening to President Jacob Zuma's State of the Nation address in South Africa, happening live right now. We're joined in studio by Desney Massey, who is giving us her perspective. Michael, of course, Michael Wilson, our business and economics editor, has joined us because this speech has a lot to do with the economy.
As we've heard, yes. I mean, he's said that business about growing the economy threefold and all the rest of it. But he was very good at Davos. He's very good internationally. But when he speaks at home, don't you get the feeling that there isn't a cohesive kind of message?
Well, that's because the ANC, they call it a broad church.
Yes.
You must remember that in 1994, when South Africa transitioned to democracy, when you vote for the ANC, you're also voting for a tripartite alliance with Labour and the left. So the South African Communist Party and the Congress of Trade Unions are part of the ANC as well. So the thing is, at home, they've got to satisfy Labour and the left, and who really want to see action on poverty. And then, of course, when Zuma goes off to Davos, he's got to make investors happy that he's making pro-market decisions as well. So I think the ANC is in quite a difficult situation, because on the one hand, foreign investors want them to have prudent fiscal policies. On the other hand, they want to see them letting go of the poverty and infrastructural problems. Those are two competing interests. So the ANC can do better in terms of implementing things, but they are, really, they've got a lot of tensions and people they've got to make happy.
Desney, thanks so much for the moment. Let's hear a bit more of President Zuma's speech. He's been going through some of the achievements of the government so far this year.
We have also rolled out 315,000 solar water geysers as of January this year, most of which were given to poor households, many of whom had never had running hot water before. We have scored successes in extending basic services through the infrastructure program. Close to 200,000 households have been connected to the national electricity grid in 2012. You will also recall that Census 2011 outlined the successes in extending basic services. The report said the number of households with access to electricity is now at 12.1 million which translates to 85%. 9 out of 10 households have access to water. To prepare for the advanced economy we need to develop, we will expand the broadband network. Last year, the private sector and public sector laid about 7,000 new fiber optic cables. The plan is to achieve 100% broadband internet penetration by 2020. With regard to social infrastructure, a total of 98 new schools will have been built by the end of March, of which
As
more
President
than
Zuma still giving, that's him live, still giving his State of the Nation speech, annual speech in Cape Town, talking about the achievements of the government so far, just then talking about increase of electricity supply. That's absolutely crucial to Africa, of course, and especially South Africa, and also their increase in the broadband volume. Again, one of the things that's going to help that economy grow, and also in the rest of Africa too. Now, so as far as the equity markets are concerned, traders naturally erred on the side of caution. Stacks were flat to little change. Remember, Johannesburg closed well before Jacob Zuma's speech. A similar picture really for the currencies. Not a great deal of movement there, as you can imagine, precisely for that kind of reason. Now, as far as commodities are concerned, gold held near its 5-week lows after the depressing data on European economies today signalled a deeper recession in the Eurozone than previously thought. Major buyers in China still on holiday, and the World Gold Council reported today that global gold demand fell last year for the first time since 2009, down 4%, as Indians and Chinese bought less jewellery. Platinum climbed for a third day, widening its spread over gold to the biggest since August 2011 on concern that global supply will drop this year, just as a recovery boosts industrial demand. The precious metal has climbed 12% this year. Now, Uganda's coffee exports rose 54% year-on-year in January because of favourable weather and better transport. They've been able to dry the coffee beans more quickly, and the roads from rural areas, which are often impassable in rainy seasons, have helped the beans get through. One of the world's biggest miners is digging itself deeper into a hole. Rio Tinto has posted a record full-year loss. It fell into the red by $3 billion in 2012. Rio's caught between a rock and a hard place with weaker commodity prices and poorly performing acquisitions. The company had to write down the value of its aluminium and Mozambique coal assets. It admits that developing infrastructure in the Southeast African country is proving more challenging than initially thought. Those problems saw Tom Albanese resign as CEO in January. In other mining results, Impala Platinum reported a 78% drop in its earnings, and Goldfields saw a 20% fall because of the strikes at 2 of its South African mines. The world's top food company has seen its slowest sales growth in 3 years. Nestlé disappointed analysts as demand in emerging markets came in lower than forecast. The company, which makes things like Kit Kat and Nescafe, warned is expecting another tough year ahead. That is business for now. Still to come on Valentine's Day, roses are red, violets are blue, how those Kenyan blooms keep coming to you.
Well done, Michael. Did you write that yourself?
Yeah.
So
well, most of
original.
it. See you later.
Well done, Michael. See you later. Now, surprising sympathy on the internet for the former Los Angeles policeman who killed 4 people in California after being fired from his job. It's being suggested he may have been unfairly treated and may have been the victim of racism. And a disappointing audience share for President Barack Obama's State of the Union address yesterday. All that and more from Face New to Arise, Washington correspondent Layla McDowell. Layla?
Hi, how are you?
Good. I guess there's not much sympathy for the LAPD, is there? Despite the tough task they had last few days trying to get Christopher Dorner. What is this sympathy on the internet?
Well, Dorner has become quite the folk hero in cyberspace. You see Facebook pages called We Are All Dorner, We Stand With Dorner, hashtag Team Dorner, and tweets that say things like Dorner kills corrupt cops, cops kill innocent people. Civil rights attorney Connie Rice, who incidentally is Condoleezza Rice's first cousin, sued the Los Angeles Police Department over a decade ago, charging them with creating a racially hostile environment. And despite the best efforts of the new police chief to improve relations, he even agreed to reopen the investigation into Dorner's original accusation that his training officer had kicked and beat a mentally ill man. That incident was corroborated by the father. But despite that, African American and Hispanic leaders say that in their communities, the ills outlined in Dorner's manifesto of racism, corruption, and brutality amongst the police force are still very common for far too many of their constituents.
Layla,
now, further fueling this is the fact that the police... Yes, go ahead.
I said this smacks back to the days of O.J. Simpson, doesn't it?
Well, it does not, and also back into the day of the riots that erupted, and old wounds that existed with the Los Angeles police force. And I think that further fueling this problem is the fact that the police shot 2 innocent Hispanic women during the manhunt, and now the brewing controversy and scandal over his death. So an audio tape was released from, that has not been independently verified, but ostensibly from the police, that's playing across local television in Los Angeles and in cyberspace, of course. And in that audio, you hear the police saying, "Use the burn option, burn him out," and uttering expletives against the suspect. And because of that, people are raising the question of, is this suspect, was Dorner subject to extrajudicial killing where the police play the role of judge, jury, and executioner? Now, the police say that the fire started when tear gas was lobbed into the cabin, but that question is on the minds of many here in the United States. And as a result, it has intensified Dorner's role and Dorner's status as a martyr and a hero for thousands of people.
Let's switch gears to the State of the Union, Layla. And look, it says that President Obama's numbers were quite disappointing, but they weren't that low, weren't they? There were 30 million plus people watching.
Well, a lot of people watch the State of the Union address, but the real number and the reason why Obama is not worried about losing his mojo in any kind of way is that job approval rating. And right now, President Obama's job approval rating is 56%. That is a 4-year high. Last year, when more people tuned in to the State of the Union, his job approval rating was 45%. So he's feeling quite comfortable right now with a very healthy 56%.
Layla, thanks.
And I think if you look at what...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that if you look at what's happening, I think the issues were very well debated during the campaign trail. So there was a lack of anticipation, perhaps. People didn't expect any surprises with the State of the Union address.
Great. Layla, thanks so much. Welcome to Arise News. We'll talk to you soon. That's
Thank
Layla.
you.
Layla McDowell in Washington, D.C. Debbie.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. Many of the world's Christians and certainly Catholics have just started 40 days of fasting for Lent. By the time Easter arrives, Catholics will have a new leader at the head of their church. Will Took reports.
Around the world, millions of Catholics gathered for Ash Wednesday to celebrate the start of Lent. The scenes in the Vatican were just a few days ago unthinkable to many. Benedict XVI conducting his last Mass as Pope. The frail 85-year-old was helped to his seat after anointing the heads of the faithful. In his sermon, he took the opportunity to talk about his shock resignation.
This is an appropriate moment to thank everyone, particularly the faithful of the Rome Diocese, as I'm about to leave the ministry of Peter, and to ask for a special thought in your prayers.
At the end of the service, St. Peter's Basilica echoed with the applause of the 8,000-strong congregation. Now the focus shifts to who will become the 266th Bishop of Rome.
Hopefully he's from somewhere else, very diversified, and I think it's a big opportunity to open up the Catholic Church.
And there's thought to be a good chance the next pontiff will be an African. Nigerian Cardinal Francis Arinze is one of the frontrunners. In Ghana, the faithful are excited by the prospect that their own Cardinal, Peter Turkson, could hold the papacy.
It will be a great joy because we also have a representative in the Vatican. Because there are several popes, I don't think we've ever had any African pope. And if we should have an African pope, we will be more happier when he's even a Ghanaian pope.
Whatever his nationality, there won't be too long to wait to find out who will succeed Benedict XVI. With the papal conclave due to convene as early as March the 15th, the Vatican says it's confident the new pope will be installed by Easter. Will Took, Arise News.
You're watching the News Hour here on Arise. Our top stories this evening. Facing a murder charge, the South African athlete Oscar Pistorius has been arrested in connection with the fatal shooting of his girlfriend. Meanwhile, the South African president, as you've been watching throughout this program, Jacob Zuma, delivering his annual State of the Nation address at the opening of Parliament. And in business news, the mining giant Rio Tinto has posted its biggest ever loss.
Also ahead on the program, we'll tell you why it's the men in Japan who are getting all the gifts this Valentine's Day.
Now, Nigeria's Minister of Trade and Investment, Olusegun Aganga, says the growth of small business is key to lifting people out of poverty across the continent. And it is vital, he says, for African countries to invest in one another to create homegrown demand. Aganga was speaking to Arise's Heather Scott.
The case for investing in Africa, the case for investing in Nigeria has been made now. And I think that is clear. Let's get into more and more people about that. The issue now is about how and when. And those are the sort of questions I hear from investors. How and when.
Okay, well, let me ask you, how?
How? Okay. As a matter of most people have not been to Africa before. It's their first opportunity. So it's important that they come and see what we have on ground. Yes, there are issues about infrastructure, but that's not, even with the sort of issues you're saying, Africa, Nigeria has been growing at 7% per annum for the last 10 years. Now, it's predicted to be one of the fastest growing going forward. Now, and we're dealing with the infrastructure issue. When you take that away, then we add at least 2-3% to your GDP growth. We must understand that the world today is a global village. And transparency, accountability, and of course, making sure that we share our story regularly is important. We need to manage that effectively and maybe drive it the way we tell our story from where we are, rather than allowing others to tell the story of Africa. We need to do more of that. It's all about policies, it's all about understanding issues. When you set up poor people, where they usually? They are in MSMEs, meaning micro, small, medium enterprises. When you look at they're in agriculture, and those are two big areas for this government in terms of policy shift and change. So we have the agricultural transformation agenda, and that's targeting primarily the farmers. So you must have a program for the bottom of the pyramid, financial inclusion policy. Central Bank is working on that. I am privileged to be responsible for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, and we're embarking on a program very, very soon, which includes financial inclusion, business training, and understanding. When you do that, you will be dealing with the issues at that level. Of course, you have a safety net program as well, but it's in our own interest to make sure that those issues are addressed, not only for security reasons, but for the fact that we need a good, healthy consumer market. Time has come for Africa to invest in Africa. There's a big opportunity there. The intra-trade in Africa is only 11%, particularly in ECOWAS. That means it's a big opportunity and a big market for us, even within Africa. And we're beginning to see intra-Africa investments.
A new UN report says human trafficking is an industry worth billions of dollars with a B. Millions of people from around the world are forced into unpaid labor and sexual exploitation, and the number of children in slavery is on the rise now, according to 27% of detected cases. Christine Bedeau is an expert in human trafficking, and she has spent over 15 years fighting slavery, and she joins us now live in the studio. Christine, thank you so much for joining us, but what an unfortunate topic. I understand that women and children make up 75% of human trafficking. 2 of every 3 children that are trafficked are girls, and this is the number that really got me. Almost 21 million human beings are victims of human trafficking. How can this be in 2013?
It's just outrageous that year on year we keep seeing the numbers rise. We see new types of opportunistic criminals targeting the most vulnerable, the poor, those without education and employment opportunities. And it's not stopping. So we have to question what's going wrong.
Another thing, Christine, that's pretty shocking as well is you would think the traffickers would be mostly men, but women traffickers are on the rise as well.
You know, this is a complex issue because some of these women, not all, but some of these women have been enslaved themselves, and this presents the only opportunity that they can break away from their own situation and support their families. So before we jump to conclusions about rise in female criminality, we have to understand that so many of these women have been abused, sexually abused, raped, and imprisoned themselves.
I'm assuming that so many of the victims of human trafficking haven't necessarily been forcibly taken from their environment. They have been duped or coerced in some way. How is this business able to really, unfortunately, thrive?
Traffickers depend so much on coercion and very subtle forms. They, you know, the whole idea of being abducted or kidnapped is not really the issue. It's subtle coercion, deception, the lure of a better life, come with me for employment or a job opportunity somewhere or education. And that's what targets those people who are the most vulnerable.
And could it be that some of these folks who have left a lifetime of poverty and I guess, you know, a really terrible lifestyle don't actually find themselves as being trafficked? I mean, it's a better life no matter how bad it is?
You know, the better life is questionable. It's one thing if you can break away, but trafficking by its very nature means that you're enslaved. You can't break away. So what do you do when somebody's holding your documents? What do you do when somebody has created this debt, which you have to keep paying back? The debt never goes away. You're enslaved for life unless there is somebody who's going to come in and free you from that.
Christine, I understand that these individuals that do end up being coerced and fooled go into trafficking very quickly. How quickly can it happen?
Oh, it can happen at just a moment's notice like that. 1 minute you can have a child playing in the front of his grandmother's home, and the next thing they're being taken away in the back of a van because somebody has decided for him that the better place for him to go is with this trafficker. So it can just happen like that, so quickly.
So what's the ultimate solution, Christine? More policing? How do you mitigate this problem?
You know, the anti-trafficking world often is frustrated because trafficking by its very nature is political, and we need activists to take a really political stand. We need the media, of course, and it's great that you're doing this. We need the media to campaign, but we need resources going to the police. We need resources going to victim support. It is political, and we need political solutions to challenge it. It's not about immigration.
It's about the money in so
It's
many
all
cases.
about the money.
Christine Bedeau, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Now for a roundup of the other stories in the headlines today. The leader of last year's coup against the Malian government has been given a role in the country's transitional administration. Captain Amadou Sanogo will head a military reform committee. The unrest that followed the coup is widely blamed for unintentionally giving Islamic militants a foothold in the country. Seoul is flexing its muscle. 2 days after North Korea detonated a nuclear bomb, the South has demonstrated its own weapons capabilities. The military vowed it could hit any target, anytime, with its missiles. And these were the scenes in New Delhi as a flash mob took to the streets. The crowd sung and danced to promote safe sex as part of International Condom Day.
And we have again come to look at the latest money moves, and our economics and business editor, Michael Wilson, is back to give us that.
Debbie, thanks very much. On Wall Street, stocks are starting to erase losses and edge closer to positive territory. Bad economic data out of Japan and Europe had dampened sentiment, but the mood is changing very, very slightly. And there's the Dow sort of nudging that 14,000 level. Now, I have deals on airlines, beans and magazines. Let's cross live to our correspondent, Chitra Norbat in New York. One has to ask oneself, what on earth the Sage of Omaha sees in baked beans? It's a big business story, though, isn't it?
Michael, what's happening is that Heinz ketchup is a favorite good of the legendary investor Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, him and his investment company Berkshire Hathaway and a private equity firm, they're buying Heinz. Heinz, they make spaghetti sauce, ketchup, and even Weight Watchers. This deal is valued at about $23 billion and will be the largest in the food industry.
What do you think he actually sees in the company? Because it's a very safe bet in a sense. It's a company which gives good dividends, doesn't it, really? It's not a huge risk. And presumably, the private equity company, which also owns Burger King or is involved in Burger King, is a good partner for him. It sounds like quite a good deal, doesn't it?
It is, because it is about diversification, and a company like this is going to have stability of earnings, profitable growth, and that's another good portfolio company for him to hold.
Indeed. I was going to say that Warren Buffett's got enough beans to count without this, but well, let's not go down there. Right, let's talk about Time Warner. What will Time Warner be without the magazines, do you think?
Who knows, actually? You know, Reuters is reporting that Time Warner is in talks to sell Time Magazine. Time Magazine is the largest U.S. publisher. They've got names like Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, and of course the iconic Time. Right now they're going through a tough situation, and that's because they're experiencing slow growth to no growth, and that's one of the reasons why Time Warner may sell them.
Right, it's Valentine's Day. Love is in the air. Let's hear about that airline merger.
American Airlines and U.S. Airways are merging to form the world's largest airline. This deal is valued at about $11 billion. The new combined company will be called American Airlines. And right now, U.S. Airways in the Northeast, they've got some great routes, particularly between Washington, D.C. and New York. So this new combined company will provide great, robust U.S. coverage.
Did you get the roses and champagne, Chitra?
No, I haven't. I checked this morning. I thought you would have been early.
Yes.
What happened?
It's probably a lot to do with the time difference. You keep your eye on the postman. I'm sure they'll be there fairly soon. Thanks very much indeed. Now, here in Europe, there's little relief in sight from the crippling debt crisis. GDP figures released today were much worse than expected and show recession across the Eurozone has deepened. The currency union as a whole shrank 0.6% in the last 3 months of 2012. That's the sharpest contraction since the start of 2009, the financial crisis. Even Germany's powerhouse economy isn't immune to downturn. It declined 0.6%. The numbers for France and Italy were just as dire. In fact, Italy's economy hasn't grown since mid-2011. So European shares fell on the gloomy view of the Eurozone. The problem is that many companies are looking abroad for profit growth, but the strength of the euro is holding them back. Once again, the European Central Bank is stressing that the markets will decide the strength of the common currency, which suggests to many that the economic data will continue to worsen. However, those European companies which are managing to export outside the EU are doing quite well. For example, the likes of Pernod, French Spirits Group, that's enjoying solid growth, while in the US, while Carmichael Renault is seeing its overseas earnings rising on the back of demand from the rest of the world. Now, the euro slid to a 3-week low against the dollar and fell more than 1% on the day against the yen, pushed lower by those concerns about a deepening recession in the Eurozone. The pound strengthened for the first time in 4 days against the European currency, but doubts still remain about the strength of the UK economy. Now, if you've been lucky enough to receive a bunch of roses this Valentine's Day, chances are they were grown in Kenya. It's the third largest flower supplier worldwide. This week, one flower company alone exported 13 million roses in 4 Boeing 747s. Our East Africa correspondent Tom Walsh filed this report from Nairobi.
Valentine's Day is, of course, a big event annually for couples around the world as they celebrate love. However, it's also one of the most important days of the year for Kenyan business. Now, behind me is a beautiful bunch of Kenyan roses and as you might expect, flower sales at this time of the year are booming. Kenyan flowers are exported around the world. Over 120,000 tonnes were sent to various countries, with the bulk going to Europe as well as emerging markets like Japan, who are taking a growing interest. In 2012, the industry made $500,000, with 30% of earnings falling in the first quarter of the year. Now, this is due to big flower days like Mother's Day and Valentine's Day, contributing to much of the profit. The horticulture sector in Kenya is worth approximately $1 billion, with the flower sector alone taking up 0.6% of the national GDP. Now, this all sounds very rosy, but troubled times are ahead. The Kenyan elections are less than 3 weeks away, and there is great concern over a repeat of the election violence of 2007-2008, which left over 1,000 dead and many more homeless. Production in the flower industry was hit hard, with reports this year that many farms are stockpiling ahead of the national vote. Earlier, I spoke with Jane Ngiri, the CEO of the Kenya Flower Council, who said despite the terrible happenings 5 years ago, she remains confident that this year will yield good profits. In fact, flower sellers here in the streets of Nairobi are selling roses with stickers attached urging Kenyans to vote this year for peace. Let's just hope that this day of love continues all the way to the elections.
Now, it is Valentine's Day, and you might have noticed, if you're watching very closely, on our last graphics, our last markets graphics, this is direct from the graphics department right now. The figures were okay. The difference in the figures was okay. The percentages were fine, but the arrows were going in the wrong direction. But tomorrow, we'll get it right, because we might not get it first, but we always get it right. The second time. Now, if you're very good, I'll give you some good advice. If we've got a few seconds at the end of the programme about how to keep your blooms up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
Can you tell us that when you present us with some roses?
Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to bring them in the studio for health and safety reasons because of the little, thorns on them and everything. I wanted to. You'll have to wait till the end of the show. But I've got the hints to keep them going that little bit longer.
Okay.
If you wish.
Chocolates, Michael? Look forward to that.
Chocolates, don't start with her.
Speaking of chocolates, you're going to like this story, Michael.
Thank you.
Listen to this. In Japan, the Valentine's Day traffic is one way.
Women aren't the only ones buying gifts. The Japanese spend $11 billion a year on chocolate, speaking of which.
Yeah, and as Antoine Boutet reports, half of that is spent this very week.
Bitter tasting roses, suckling pigs, oriental fans, or even Victorian statues. Confectioners unleash their imagination on Valentine's Day in Japan, where tradition dictates that women, not men, give chocolate gifts. But not just to their partners. They must also treat all their male colleagues, friends and relatives.
Today I've spent around $100.
Me, only 10.
There are dozens of stands dedicated entirely to chocolate to help women in search of cocoa. This year, French chocolatiers like Pascal Café figure among the most popular.
This is our most popular box of chocolates. All these corks contain champagne, and there are different flavors: dark, white raspberry, and milk chocolate. We sell this box for $34.
It would cost me too much to buy this type of chocolate for all my colleagues. We all agreed to buy cheaper chocolates for each other. The ones I've just bought are saved for close friends.
This commercial tradition was introduced in Japan after the war by chocolatiers in search of new markets. It's been a very successful endeavour. Today, it's so widespread that there are several names for Valentine's Day chocolates, depending on who they're bought for.
In Japanese, we call it giri choco, which means obligation chocolate. This is the chocolate that women give to their male colleagues. Tomo choco, chocolate for friends, is chocolate that you only give to people you really like. The February sales should make us approximately half of our whole year's worth of chocolate sales.
In a month's time, Japan will also celebrate White Day, when men who received chocolates from women are supposed to reciprocate the gesture. It's only fair after all.
All right, we're going a long way from Valentine's and chocolate to this very beautiful picture that we have right here. Seals, birds, and of course humans all use the stars to navigate. According to Horizon News' Sarah Head, new research in South Africa shows the African dung beetle, that's what that is right there, also uses the Milky Way to keep dung, that's what that is right there, safe from competitors.
I'm in Vryburg, South Africa, and two dung beetles are engaged in a food fight. After the clash, the victorious insect scuttles away with its dung ball, searching for a safe place to eat his prize. Even in the dark of night, the beetle has a highly developed sense of direction, taking the straightest path away from its competitor. Biologists have long wondered how the beetles do it, and now they know. Dung beetles use the Milky Way as their guide.
So even if the beetle can't see the individual stars, they can still see this band of light. And then they can then roll with the Milky Way or across the Milky Way or at any angle to the Milky Way as they wish, and thereby be able to keep a straight path even at night.
Look at this.
Look at that.
Biologist Marie Dack and zoologist Marcus Byrne decided to test the beetle's navigation skills in a controlled environment. So they took the insects to the Johannesburg Planetarium, where realistic nighttime scenarios could be created.
We could test the performance of the beetles under these different sky conditions. And the night when we had only the Milky Way projected onto the planetarium dome, the beetles were doing equally well as they were under the full starry sky. So that's when we understood that it must be the Milky Way that they're relying on to orientate themselves in straight lines.
Marcus Byrne believes their findings demonstrate that tiny brains are no hindrance to intelligent behaviour. No matter what, he says the animals just keep on rolling.
It's the tenacity of the dung beetle. It doesn't care if we're there, it doesn't care if it's day or night, and it's a great animal to work with.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now the researchers are trying to determine if the beetle's navigation skills are affected by different surfaces and terrains. The bottom line, they say, is that it appears obvious. The beetle will do whatever's necessary to hold on to its dung. Sarah Head, Arise News.
How does one segue from Beatles to sports? Well, George Best was known as the fifth Beatle. How about that? Moving right along. Now, for a roundup of the stories making sports today, Manchester United will be looking to build on their away goal advantage after drawing 1-1 with Real Madrid last night. The Red Devils will host the Spanish side in the second leg of their Champions League clash in 3 weeks' time. Slovenian teenager Jaka Hrvala is celebrating his win at the FIS Ski Jumping World Cup in Germany. It was this astonishing final jump from the 19-year-old that secured his victory. And Newcastle and Ivory Coast midfielder Sheikh Tiote has been arrested by British police on suspicion of fraud related to driving offences. His £75,000 Chevrolet Camaro has also been confiscated. The investigation continues.
And moving on, born in Paris, raised in Lagos, she says her music is a tale of both cities. Nigerian soul singer Asha has been speaking exclusively to Arise. I met her recently before a performance. Take a listen.
Stop calling me a prisoner. Blood here is without sin. Be the first to cast a stone, Mr. Jailer. Hey, Mr. Jailer man.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. So who are you talking about?
I'm talking to anybody, nobody. I mean, and everybody. It depends on, you know yourself, you know who you are. But most importantly, anyone who puts anybody, another human down, is a jailer. And there's no sense in it. You know, you can get away with it, but I don't think you get away a free man. You know, so I don't believe in anybody bringing anybody down. I had that experience, and that's why I wrote this song. And yeah.
And as I watched you, you're a beautiful young woman, and there's clear passion that I see for your craft. But you become somebody almost completely different while you're playing. Do you feel that?
Well, people say so.
Yeah.
But yes, I think on the stage, it's a different world to me. Something that it's completely strange, because I hardly can see myself, and I can watch myself on television or hear myself or listen to the album after it's been mixed and cut. It's very hard. It's a different world for me, and I always like, who's she? Why is she doing that? But at that time, I'm somewhere else. Another world that I don't recognize as an ordinary person.
You get lost. You get lost in the music.
That's someone totally different. Yeah.
I can see that. Do you get nervous?
I get nervous. If I don't get nervous, then there's a problem. I would probably not have a good show. That's the strange thing, I always get nervous.
Yeah. Do you ever think about your detractors when you're up on stage? Those people?
No, I don't. I see a lot of them, and hey, what are you doing? How you going? How's life? I don't hold back. Yeah. And I don't take it personal too,
Okay.
It's just for me to look back and, and see where I have come, where I'm going, and how far I still need to go.
When you're doing a concert date, what do you want the concert goers to get out of the experience?
I just want them to leave there smiling. I want them to leave there content. I've seen a few concerts that I feel happy, and I talk about it for days. That's what I want it to be memorable. So whatever I do, I always want to bring it, 150% on stage and give myself, actually.
Are the audiences different, continent to continent, country to country?
No. It's the same. It's the same. Maybe back home, the people there, they sing louder than I sing because they know me. I'm theirs, you see. So I'm home. But everywhere else is the same. Be it in France, be it in the U.S., Japan, Brazil, wherever we've gone, Australia. Very strangely, everybody feels the same, and they tell me there's something that makes them feel happy. And I remember when I was writing the song, I wanted to smile, but still talk about my pain, talk about what I felt that could be right, you see. But I was happy. I was in a good place, So, and I like that the feeling, and it makes me feel good.
Where has your favorite audience been? Your favorite place to perform?
Wow, that's a hard one.
You have one though.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
'Cause every new country is my favorite. Every new country is my favorite. But I would name a few. It's been great in Brazil, in Japan. I've been there, I think twice now, and it's been amazing. France is amazing. Nigeria. I'm always happy to go back home.
She is such a lovely person. She's very, very, very popular in Paris, and of course her popularity is increasing in Africa, and she just hopes to take on the whole world.
I'll tell you who she reminds me of, another Nigerian singer, if you will, from back in the day, Sade.
Yes,
very
absolutely.
Much. The soulfulness.
Very soulful. She has a reputation for having an old soul. I asked her about that. She didn't really like being called old, but she is very soulful. She's seen some conflict and some challenges in her life, and she puts that in her music.
Amazing.
Very effective.
Well
yeah, very soulful voice, isn't it, really? Just on the roses then.
Yeah.
When you get back to your hotel room, and you fight your way into the room through all the roses, and you want to keep them, there are a number of things that you you need to do, and this comes after extensive research through the world's florists. I found this out today. First of all, take the leaves off the stalks because it allows more moisture to get in. Cut the stalks at an angle because it gives more surface area. If you've got a penny coin or something which is copper, stick it in the water because that helps kill bacteria. And also a bit of aspirin helps. And a spot of vodka helps as well.
You or the roses?
Well, I was going to say, just a spot of vodka in it, drink the rest, and you'll suddenly have more roses. So there you are.
That's not what you told us earlier, Michael. There's another way to preserve the roses for a few more days.
Go on.
No, you told us.
What? Salt?
We're running out of time, somebody say.
Somebody say. You tell us. I think
well,
it's
while
salt.
they discuss that, you guys have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.
See you.